Picture two neighbors living on the same street in the same mid-sized American city, both earning $72,000 a year, both with two kids, both driving 4-year-old sedans, and both starting from zero at age 25. By the time they turn 55, one of them has $340,000 in savings, zero debt, a paid-off house, and sleeps 8 hours every single night without a financial worry crossing his mind. The other has $14,000 in savings, a second mortgage, 3 active credit cards, and spends every Sunday afternoon anxious about the coming week. What is the difference between these two people? It is not income, they earned the same salary for 30 years. It is not luck, neither one inherited money or won anything. It is not intelligence, they went to the same university and graduated the same year. The difference is a set of invisible habits, habits that the second person simply never encountered, never learned, and never practiced. Habits that for millions of people in Japan are not extraordinary at all, but simply the ordinary, quiet way that money is handled. Here is what makes this uncomfortable. You are almost certainly closer to the second neighbor than the first, not because you are doing anything dramatically wrong, but because no one ever handed you the framework that makes wealth feel natural instead of stressful. By the end of this video, you will understand 8 specific Japanese money habits that operate below the surface of everyday life, why they work on a psychological and financial level, and exactly how you can begin building them into your own life starting this week. These are not hacks, and they are not get-rich-quick tactics. They are the slow, quiet architecture of a financial life that does not collapse under pressure. There is a Japanese concept called ma, written with a single character that means something like negative space, or the meaningful pause between things. In Japanese architecture, ma is the empty room that gives the rest of the house breathing space. In Japanese music, ma is the silence between notes that makes the melody feel alive. And in Japanese financial life, ma is the deliberate gap between earning money and spending it, the conscious pause that separates impulse from intention. What most people never realize is that the entire modern Western financial system is engineered to eliminate your ma, to shrink the gap between desire and purchase to as close to 0 seconds as possible. One-click buying on Amazon exists to destroy your ma. Contactless payment exists to destroy your ma. Buy now, pay later exists to destroy your ma. Every convenience that the financial industry sells you as a feature is, at its core, a mechanism for removing the pause between "I want this" and "I have now spent money on this." Here's where it gets interesting for you. Research published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that even a 24-hour waiting period before a non-essential purchase reduces the likelihood of completing that purchase by 47%. Not because people forget, but because the pause allows the rational brain to catch up with the emotional brain. That 47% is not a small number. Across a year of spending decisions, that gap represents thousands of dollars of purchases you would never have made if you had simply waited one day. The 8 habits you are about to learn are all at their foundation different expressions of ma, different ways of inserting intentional space between you and the reflexive financial decisions that quietly drain your wealth over decades. This is not about deprivation, and it is not about discipline in the painful white-knuckle sense of the word. It is about designing your financial life so that the pause happens naturally without you needing to fight yourself every single time. Rule 1. Practice Kakeibo, right before you spend. The first rule requires you to treat your money like a conversation you're having with yourself every single day. Kakeibo, pronounced Kakeibo, is a Japanese household budgeting method that dates back to 1904, invented by Hani Motoko, the first female journalist in Japan, as a tool for women to take conscious control of household finances. The method is deceptively simple. At the start of every month, you write down how much money you have, how much you need to spend on essentials, how much you want to save, and what your financial goal is for that month. Not typed, not tracked in an app, but physically written by hand in a dedicated notebook. Then, every single evening, you write down everything you spent that day, categorized not just by type, but by why: survival, optional, culture, or extra. At the end of the month, you ask yourself 4 questions in writing. How much did you have? How much did you spend? How much did you save? And how can you improve next month? The reason this works is not because tracking numbers creates discipline. It's because the physical act of writing activates a different cognitive process than tapping an app and forces you to confront each spending decision as a real event rather than an abstraction. A person who does not practice Kakeibo might spend $430 a month on food delivery without ever consciously acknowledging that number exists, because the individual transactions feel small and the total is never assembled in one visible place until it's too late to matter. A person who writes in their Kakeibo every night knows by the 12th of the month that they have already spent $180 on food delivery and only $90 left in that category, which means the next 3 weeks require a different decision.
If you skip this rule, you will continue making financial decisions in the dark, not because you are irresponsible, but because the modern payment system is specifically designed to keep you from ever seeing the full picture until the bill arrives. This brings us to a habit that makes Kakeibo even more powerful when you combine them together. Rule 2. Apply Ichigo Ichie to every purchase decision. The second rule asks you to treat every spending decision as if it were the only one you will ever make in that category. Ichigo Ichie is a Japanese philosophical concept meaning one time, one meeting. It originated in the world of the Japanese tea ceremony, where every gathering is treated as a once-in-a-lifetime event that will never be exactly repeated. Applied to personal finance, it means this: before you spend money on anything that is not a fixed necessity, you pause and ask one question. If this were the only time I could spend money on this category this month, would I still choose this specific thing right now? You are standing in a store and you pick up a $65 kitchen gadget that looks interesting, and you ask yourself, if I can only spend money on one non-essential item this week, is this the thing I would choose to spend it on? The answer, a very large percentage of the time, is no. Not because $65 is a devastating amount, but because when you frame any purchase as the representative purchase for an entire category, you suddenly apply your real values to the decision instead of your momentary mood. A study from Princeton's Behavioral Economics Lab found that people who practiced comparative spending questions, essentially asking, is this the best use of this money compared to other options, reduced discretionary spending by an average of $312 per month without reporting any decrease in life satisfaction. That is $3,744 per year, not redirected to misery, but redirected to your future self, without you feeling like you sacrificed anything meaningful. If you skip this rule, you will continue making financial decisions based on what feels right in the moment, rather than what aligns with your actual priorities, and the gap between your bank balance and your stated values will remain invisible but permanent. But here's what makes the next rule different, because rules 1 and 2 are about individual decisions, and rule 3 is about the system underneath all of them. Rule 3. Use the envelope system. Give every yen a job. The third rule is about creating a physical, tangible relationship with the money you actually spend. In Japan, a practice called Fukuro Bunke, envelope budgeting, has been a standard household money management technique for generations, predating digital banking by over a century and surviving it intact because it works in a way that no app has managed to replicate. The principle is exactly what it sounds like. At the start of every month, you withdraw your discretionary spending money in cash and divide it into physical envelopes, one for groceries, one for transport, one for entertainment, one for clothing, and so on, with a specific pre-decided amount in each envelope. When the grocery envelope is empty, you stop buying groceries that are not absolute necessities until the next month. When the entertainment envelope is empty, you find free ways to spend your weekend. The money in the savings envelope goes directly to your savings account before any envelope is opened. The psychological mechanism here is real and documented. Research from MIT's Sloan School of Management demonstrated that people spend up to 83% more when paying by card compared to paying with physical cash, because the pain of payment, what behavioral economists call the coupling effect, is dramatically higher when you physically hand over money and watch it leave your hand. If you currently spend $800 a month on discretionary items using a card, the same person spending from physical envelopes typically lands at $440 to $470 per month on identical categories, not because they're depriving themselves, but because the physical reality of running out of paper money creates a natural break that a digital account never does. If you skip this rule, your budget will remain a theoretical document you reference once a month with mild guilt, rather than a living system that guides your decisions in real time. Now, once you understand the physical side of money management, the next rule becomes obvious because it addresses what you do with the money you are no longer spending. Rule 4. Automate your savings like a salary deduction. The fourth rule requires you to treat saving as a bill you pay to yourself before you pay anyone else. In Japan, workplace savings programs called Zaison Keisi, literally wealth formation, automatically deduct a preset percentage from an employee's paycheck before it ever lands in their bank account, so the money is never available to spend in the first place. The behavioral mechanism here is not subtle. Humans will spend whatever money they can see, and they will adapt their lifestyle to whatever money remains, which means the sequence matters more than the amount. Save first and spend what is left. This is the architecture of wealth accumulation. Spend first and save what is left. This is the architecture of permanent financial anxiety. You can replicate this system in your own life, regardless of whether your employer offers it, by setting up an automatic transfer from your checking account to a separate savings account, preferably to a different bank, preferably one that takes 2 to 3 days to transfer money back, preferably one you don't have an app installed on your phone for, on the exact day your paycheck lands, before you touch a single dollar of it. The amount doesn't need to be large to begin with. Even $150 per month started at age 25 and invested at a conservative 7% annual return becomes $35,000 by age 45 and $72,000 by age 55, entirely through the power of removing the decision from your conscious mind. If you skip this rule, you will continue making save what is left at the end of the month, which means you will save almost nothing because lifestyle spending always expands to fill available income in every country at every income level without exception. This brings us to a rule that is not about how much you save, but about what you save it from. Master Mottainai, eliminate the waste layer. The fifth rule asks you to identify and eliminate what Japanese culture calls mottainai, a word with no direct English equivalent that roughly means the regret over wastefulness, or the sadness of something valuable being used below its potential. In Japanese households, mottainai is a constant, quiet discipline. Food is not wasted because ingredients are purchased intentionally and used completely. Clothing is repaired rather than discarded. Appliances are maintained because replacement is considered a failure of care, not a normal life cycle.
Applied to your financial life, Mottainai is a framework for identifying the waste layer that most Western households carry invisibly. The subscriptions that renew automatically for services used once a quarter, the gym membership used 3 times in 14 months, the streaming services that run in the background while you watch a 4th platform. The average American household carries $219 per month in subscription services they do not actively use, according to a 2023 survey by C+R Research. That is $2,628 per year flowing out of your account for things generating zero value in your life. The Mottainai audit is simple. Once a quarter, you open your bank statements for the past 3 months and highlight every recurring charge. Then you ask one question about each one. Did I use this enough in the past 90 days to pay for it again for the next 90 days? Cancel everything that fails that test immediately, that same day, without waiting to think about it, because thinking about it is the mechanism by which waste survives. If you skip this rule, you will spend the next decade funding a portfolio of services and products that quietly extract money from your account in exchange for nothing you actually value, and the cumulative cost over 10 years will be large enough to matter. But here is what makes the next rule different, because Mottainai is about eliminating what drains you, and Rule 6 is about building what sustains you. Rule 6. Build a Shuchu fund. Concentrate your financial energy. The 6th rule requires you to stop spreading your financial goals across 15 simultaneous priorities and instead concentrate your resources with the focus of a single beam of light. In Japanese business culture, the concept of shuchu, concentration, refers to the practice of directing all available energy toward one objective at a time rather than distributing effort inefficiently across multiple targets simultaneously. Applied to personal finance, this means you do not try to pay off 3 debts at once while also building an emergency fund, while also saving for a vacation, while also contributing to retirement. You pick one priority, throw every available dollar at it until it is done, then move to the next one. The mathematics here are not intuitive, but they are clear. If you have $500 per month available for financial goals and you split it evenly across 5 objectives, each goal receives $100 and all 5 goals inch forward so slowly that the progress is essentially invisible, which destroys motivation and makes you feel like your efforts are pointless. If you concentrate that same $500 on one goal at a time, clearing a $3,000 credit card balance first, for example, you finish that goal in 6 months, eliminate the $74 per month in interest charges, free up $574 per month for the next goal, and experience the psychological momentum of actually completing something, which research in behavioral psychology consistently identifies as one of the most powerful drivers of continued financial behavior. If you skip this rule, you will continue the deeply American habit of trying to do everything at once, which means nothing gets done with the velocity it deserves, and the interest you pay on debt you are slowly paying off quietly negates the savings you are slowly building up. Now, once you understand concentration, the next rule will reframe the way you think about the things you own. Rule 7. Practice Danshari. Own less, own better. The 7th rule asks you to see your possessions not as a collection of things you have accumulated, but as a portfolio of items you are actively choosing to keep in your life, and to manage that portfolio with the same intentionality you would apply to a financial investment. Danshari, a Japanese decluttering philosophy meaning roughly refuse, dispose, separate, is not Marie Kondo, and it is not minimalism for aesthetic reasons. It is a financial discipline rooted in the recognition that every object you own carries an ongoing cost, whether that cost is visible or not. Physical space in your home costs money. The extra bedroom used for storage, the garage too full to park in, the storage unit rented to hold things that have not been touched in 3 years. Maintenance costs money. The appliances you keep because replacing them would feel wasteful. The wardrobe of clothes too large to wear but too expensive to discard. Cognitive cost is real. Research from Princeton's neuroscience lab, published in the Journal of Neuroscience, demonstrated that physical clutter in your visual environment measurably reduces your capacity for focused decision-making, which means a cluttered financial environment literally impairs your ability to make good financial choices. The Danshari practice in financial terms means twice a year you walk through your possessions and ask, would I buy this today at its current value? And everything that fails that question gets sold, donated, or discarded, which simultaneously generates income, reduces ongoing costs, and creates the mental clarity that better financial decisions require. If you skip this rule, you will continue paying rent, financial, spatial, and psychological, on a portfolio of possessions that is growing slightly every year and costing you slightly more every year in ways that never appear as a single visible line item on your statement. This brings us to the final rule, the one that underpins all the others, and the one that most Americans will find the most uncomfortable. Rule 8. Embrace Shōganai. Accept what is beyond your control and act on what is not. The 8th rule is not a tactic, it is the philosophical foundation that makes all the other 7 habits sustainable over a lifetime. Shōganai, loosely translated as "it cannot be helped," is a deeply embedded Japanese cultural disposition towards accepting realities that are beyond individual control without resentment, without catastrophizing, and without the particular American habit of treating every financial setback as a personal moral failure. You lost $8,000 in a market downturn. Shōganai. The market moves independently of your virtue, and the only meaningful question is what you do next. You were laid off, and your emergency fund only lasted 4 months instead of 6. Shōganai. You cannot change the layoff, and the only meaningful question is what you do now.
You made a financial decision 10 years ago that you now regret? Shōganai. The past is fixed, and every dollar of mental energy you spend resenting it is a dollar of mental energy unavailable for building the future. The reason this matters financially is not philosophical but practical. The American relationship with money is saturated with shame, and shame is the single most reliable mechanism for avoiding the honest financial self-reflection that wealth requires. A person who carries shame about their debt does not open their bank statements, because opening statements generates more shame, and shame is painful, so avoidance becomes the default. A person who practices Shōganai looks at the debt clearly, not because it is comfortable, but because it is simply a fact, and facts are the only material available for building a better future. If you skip this rule, you will build financial habits on a foundation of emotional avoidance, which means every difficult financial moment becomes not just a practical challenge, but a psychological crisis, and the energy required to survive the crisis leaves nothing left for the sustained, quiet work of actually building wealth. This week, you buy a small, physical notebook and label it your Kakeibo, and for 7 consecutive days, you write down every single dollar you spend, no matter how small the amount, no matter how embarrassing the category, because you cannot change a pattern you cannot see, and this week is purely about seeing. You are not trying to change your behavior this week. You are not judging yourself. You are not setting limits. You are only building the habit of looking clearly at what is already happening, because clarity is the prerequisite for every other change that follows. This month, you conduct a full Mottainai audit of your last 90 days of bank and credit card statements. You identify every recurring charge, and you cancel every subscription that fails the "did I use this enough to pay for it again?" test. And you redirect the recovered money directly to your savings account the same day. The reason this action matters for you this month specifically is that the money is already leaving your account. You have simply not decided where it goes yet, and that decision is available to you right now without any lifestyle sacrifice whatsoever. This quarter, you set up a single automatic transfer from your checking account to a separate savings account on the day your paycheck arrives, for an amount between $100 and $300, depending on your current situation, and you remove the app for that savings account from your phone, so accessing the money requires deliberate, conscious friction rather than a reflex tap. This one structural decision, made once and automated, will do more for your wealth over the next decade than any individual spending decision you make this year, because it removes the choice from the domain of willpower and places it in the domain of architecture. This year, you define your single most important financial goal for the next 12 months. One goal written in one specific sentence with a specific dollar amount and a specific date, and you arrange your entire financial system around hitting that one target before you address anything else. The reason this matters is that unfocused financial effort produces unfocused financial results, and the person who makes meaningful progress on one thing is always better positioned than the person who makes marginal progress on 10 things, because completed goals build the psychological momentum that sustains the entire system through the inevitable difficult months. Do you remember the two neighbors at the beginning? The two people earning the same $72,000, starting from the same zero, living on the same street. Now you understand exactly what separated them. It was not one dramatic decision. It was 8 quiet habits practiced daily over 30 years by someone who understood that wealth is not a destination you arrive at, but an environment you construct, one small intentional action at a time. And here is the critical thing to understand about where you are right now. Every financial habit you have ever built has placed you inside one of two systems, and those systems are self-reinforcing in opposite directions. The virtuous cycle works like this. You write down your spending, you see where your money actually goes, you make one small adjustment, you build one small success, and that success makes the next adjustment easier, because confidence, not discipline, is what makes good financial habits sustainable. The destructive cycle works like this. You avoid looking at your finances because the discomfort is too high. The avoidance keeps you from catching problems early. The small problems grow to larger ones. The large problems feel too overwhelming to address, and the overwhelm deepens the avoidance. Which cycle are you currently inside? And more importantly, do you know that the entry point to the virtuous cycle is available to you this week for free with a notebook that costs $2? A 2022 study by the National Endowment for Financial Education found that people who tracked their spending by hand for just 30 consecutive days reported a 23% increase in financial confidence and a measurable improvement in long-term savings behavior. Not because tracking is magic, but because seeing is the first act of agency, and agency is the foundation of everything else. The Japanese do not have a secret that is beyond your reach. They have a framework that is simply different from the one you were handed, and frameworks can be learned, practiced, and over time internalized until they become as automatic and invisible as the habits they are replacing. The real question is not whether these habits work. 30 years of behavioral economics research and centuries of cultural practice suggest clearly that they do. The real question is whether you are willing to treat your financial life with the same quiet, consistent seriousness that you already bring to the things that matter most to you. Because the way you handle your money is not just a practical matter, it's a daily expression of what you believe you deserve.